Hey guys, and welcome to the Human Reset. Yes, I know the title can be a little clickbaity, and it was not my intention at all, but it's actually a fact, and I'm going to prove it to you in just a minute that it's actually something 100% science-based. So what do I mean by bad food? Getting you to a place where you can lose your relationship, or you can lose your job or your career, or stuff like that. Now, here's the correlation. Typically, when we talk about bad food, in the Western diet, the diet that most of us consume on a daily basis, we're talking about a few major groups. We have the refined carbs, which is for example, anything in the white flour, sugary drinks category. Everything that tastes really, really good, that's one. Because at the end of the day, refined carbs in the bloodstream, they do become sugar. And then we're talking about deep fried or highly processed and stuff that you have to take home and fry, which is the worst possible stuff you can eat, because that's when you're talking about trans fats, the famous or infamous trans fats that have a really negative connotation, and for good reason. Now, here's the correlation between bad food and how you feel. Without getting too technical, just keeping it very easy to understand, it's the following. Basically, whatever we ingest has a direct correlation and a direct influence on our gut biome, on our gut bacteria. We need a good kind of gut bacteria for our mood and our levels of energy and focus to function properly. The reason for that is that 90% of serotonin, which is one of the main neurotransmitters responsible for how we feel, and particularly if we feel good, if we feel happy, is found in the gut bacteria, in the gut. So if we directly influence that in a negative way, our entire mood is completely disrupted. So that's number one. And when you look at what other influence bad food, especially sugary drinks, especially carbs, can have on your gut bacteria, that can cause irritability, that can cause depression, that can cause anxiety, and it's a cycle, right? So what happens is, and a lot of us are not aware of that, is that you consider a meal to be just a meal. But for example, if your blood sugar goes really high, about 30 to 40 to 1 hour after you've had that bad meal, and then 2 or 3 hours later it goes really low to a point where you feel sluggish, where you feel depressed, where you feel anxious, you can imagine how that's the perfect petri dish for a lot of bad stuff to happen in your relationship, in your career, whatever you're talking about. Because if, for example, you are to have an important conversation with your spouse or your boss or a friend you really care about, but physiological, you're not in a optimum state of functioning, because you've had the huge burger with chocolate and ice cream, and then you topped it off with a sugary drink. There's a very good chance that you're gonna say the wrong thing, that you're not gonna be completely engaged, that you're gonna start a conflict you probably did not you didn't think about starting. And I don't have to tell you that that's a really bad recipe for any type of conversation, for any type of communication. So I would encourage you, this is definitely not a fairy tale. I would encourage you to look at the science behind all this stuff and see for yourself what happens if you do this on a regular basis. For example, and just as a comparison, people who follow the so-called Mediterranean diet, which is very rich in foods that are bioavailable, a lot of plants, seafood, fish, basically a lot of natural stuff and not that much processed stuff. They definitely don't drink Coca-Cola or sugary drinks all day long. They definitely don't eat ice cream or processed food all day long. The difference in the levels of anxiety and depression between people on traditional Western diet, like what we all eat, right? Whatever the US or any developed country diet is today, And that type of diet is quite significant. So for the Mediterranean diet, studies show that the depression and anxiety levels are almost up to 30%, 35% lower, which is a huge difference when you think about it. And that, if nothing else, should get us to a place where we are more mindful about what we put inside our bodies. Just as a short and maybe not very happy conclusion, here's the thing. Eating bad food on a regular basis, a couple times a week, 3-4 times a week, that's considered to be a lot, can also have a direct correlation with your neuroplasticity capacity. Basically, that's the brain's capacity to adapt, to function and learn and change itself as it's learning. So basically, that's going to be reduced. That's number one. That's going to also trigger chronic inflammation, which is one of the worst states your entire physiology, your entire body can find itself in. And last but not least, the plethora of psychological and mental responses we mentioned earlier, like irritability, like depression, like anxiety. So for all those reasons, if I were to send just one message today, would be a very, very simple one. Just be a bit more mindful about how you feed, what your nutrition levels are, and at least when we're inevitably going to consume, some sort of bad food, just try to make a mental note of it and try to prepare ourselves, because the rest of our day or the next 3 to 6 to 10 hours can be impacted by that. Thank you guys. I'll see you next time.